Episode 127 of 5 Drinks to Midnight. The show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, we try to wrap up before midnight. Today we are headed back to Travel Bar to talk to Keli Rivers, Senior Brand Ambassador for Sipsmith Gin. But before we do, like and subscribe, hit the bells, the whistles, leave a comment if you like what we're doing. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me. 5 Drinks at Midnight, 5 drinks, 5 questions. Thanks for joining me at Travel Bar. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm one of my favorite bars. It's a little bit difficult to get there, but I blame the transit authorities and not Mike at the bar or anybody else that comes here. I do say that as much as the beautiful whiskeys here, there's a serious lack of gin.
Okay, well, maybe after this we can get Mike to fix that. So
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
I guess first question, what are we drinking first?
So the first drink that I'm having is kind of when I'm going out, whether I'm eating, drinking, it's in the morning or the night. This is the first drink I start with. It's a good palate cleanser. It really kind of sets the day, but it also kind of tells you where your bartender and bar is and a good way to judge where to go from next.
Okay.
So this is the king of cocktails, the martini.
Excellent.
So cheers. So when I get this martini, I always ask, because I'm a little bit of a freak about a lot of things, a lemon twist on the side. So I drink the first one without the lemon twist, then I express it over. I do not rub, I do not drop, and then I throw it over my shoulder. Yes, because I don't want any more bitterness in the drink, because my life is bitter as it is. So who wants to drink that?
Absolutely. Well, cheers again.
Cheers.
All right. So, question 1.
Yes.
It's an origin story. So, how did
gin story?
how'd you get started in the spirits industry? And is it true it's because of your aunt?
It is, yes, it is. My great aunt, my Aunt Liz.
Okay.
So she taught me how to make cocktails when I was 7 years old.
Excellent.
I guess it's the only reason why you have children. You do the laundry, to the dishes, and make cocktails when you don't want to get up.
Excellent.
So during the summers, my parents would send me and my older sister to Niagara Falls, New York.
Okay.
We'd go to Buffalo for fun.
Okay.
And when my grandmother had a little bit of hard time, she's like, I need a break from these children. She would send me to her older sisters, my Aunt Liz. My Aunt Liz and my Uncle Buddy never had children, so they had like all the fancy stuff in the world, all the beautiful things that they had when they traveled, but they also liked cocktails. My Uncle Buddy is actually made an honorary colonel because he drank all the whiskey with all the right people. There's actually a photo of him drinking with Booker, Elmer, and Jimmy Russell.
Okay.
Because he was a northerner, but he liked to go down to Kentucky to drink his whiskey, and they liked to have him pay for it, even though they didn't need him to pay for it. It was just a get one to the northern.
Yeah.
He also he worked in the banking industry in New York, and his lunch was Cavassier, bourbon, and a pack of cigarettes. And my uncle, who used to visit him, didn't know which order he drank them in.
Okay.
But he would have a lunch of an entire pack of cigarettes.
So
she would let me make her martinis, her old fashions. When she wanted a dessert one, she would have it with Southern Comfort.
Okay.
So I found out that gin was really good in iced tea.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I started in my drinking of gin. Only at 21, never. Never.
Never.
But yeah, so I actually, in the industry, wanted to be a race car driver.
Okay.
And so I grew up in Germany, and so when we were driving on the Autobahn, all the cars would pass us on long drives. I would always play the game in my head, and we always came in last. So I decided when I was old enough, I would never come in last. So I wanted to be a race car driver. I have a Class 6 racing license from NASCAR.
Okay.
And I was taking a turn and I flipped my car. And at that point, you still had your own car. My mother was out of the country living at the time, but she was my emergency contact. And so when she found out that I was sent to the emergency room, nothing happened. I was just standard. There ended my racing career. And when I came back, all my tools were been sold. And if you can't work on your own engine, you don't have any money yet. So I fell back on being a chef.
Okay.
So I have 4 degrees in culinary art. I did my internship in Japan, and that was the first time I actually bartended in Roppongi, which is the club district of Tokyo.
Yep.
And it was a little bar called Gas Panic. Just a little bar, Gas Panic, and I was a cocktail server.
Okay.
And the internship did not pay, so I still had to make money for living and transport. This was in '98, so there was no real, the cocktail industry is very, very small, so the biggest thing there was Galliano.
Okay.
So all the Hardy Wall bangers.
Nice.
But as a cocktail server, I had a menu that I would wear around my neck and a flashlight because the rule was you had to have a drink in your hand to stay in the bar. And there was dancing, so I would just tap people on the shoulder, light up my chest area, and have them point to whatever they want. While that was happening, I ended up getting 3rd-degree burn on my arm. An iron fell on it. So, So I had 3rd-degree burn, and they were going to give away my shift at Gas Panic after the first week if I didn't show. So I came in, my arm was all bandaged. It was one of the hottest days in Tokyo. And so halfway through my shift in this down basement bar, I ended up taking off my bandage, and there was just one giant blister. And to this day, I still hate Chumbawamba.
I get knocked down, but I get up again.
The song was Thug Thug.
Yeah.
And I was delivering a vodka soda, also, don't like vodka sodas, to a gentleman, tapped him on the shoulder, handed to him right when he was jumping, and he spilled, the vodka soda on my burn. I started screaming, it was so loud, he just waved me off and took his arm and then wiped off the vodka soda. First time I ever kicked anyone out of the bar also. I ended up going behind the bar and putting my arm under tepid water to ease it, and they're like, well, you're back here. Make drinks. Again, nothing crazy, just plus ups. The next shift I went in and my lanyard was gone and I thought I was being fired. And they're like, no, you're just way better behind the bar. So I ended up starting as a bartender.
Awesome. Well then, how did that, I guess fast forward. How do we become senior brand ambassador at Sipsmith Gin?
So I traveled around. I worked in every continent but Antarctica, mostly in kitchens, working in bars on the side because it always paid better. Working in bars is very much like working on the line. Balance, speed, understanding of recipes, and flavors. So I came back to the Bay Area. I worked in some lovely restaurants and restaurants in the Bay Area for about 12 years. And I was just burnt out. And I ended up working in this lovely restaurant. It was a Michelin star Latin restaurant in the early 2000s, so the craft movement was just started going. And I started to work bartending in that bar, fresh juices. We were making 300, 400 margaritas a night. And so I started to learn about tequilas and rums. And what ended up happening was somebody asked me for a Sazerac. Didn't know what a Sazerac was. I ended up asking the bar manager what a Sazerac was, and he gave me the recipe, which had Godiva chocolate in it. It had simple syrup in it. It was just, so I made towards what I thought, and I gave it to the guest, and I saw that they were confused. And then I asked them how it was. They're like, well, the cocktail's good. It's not a Sazerac. And I remember the amount of sorrow I felt. I know all these recipes for food and the skill, but I never wanted to have someone come up and say to me, something that I didn't know.
Right.
So I went down a giant rabbit hole of learning the difference between bourbon and whiskeys, and we were a tequila bar and rum bar and cachaça and classic cocktails. And that establishment opened quite a few other bars and restaurants, and one of them was a Texas-style barbecue called T-Rex.
Okay.
And it wanted to have the largest whiskey collection in California. And this was, 2005. And so a lot of the whiskeys were still scotches, were very prominent, or like Jack Jameson and Jim Beam and Maker's Mark. And I remember having all these beautiful American whiskeys and bourbons, and it was barbecue. Without bourbon, it was great. We had a giant soda menu for children, and there was no allocations. I mean, at that time, Buffalo Trace wasn't even coming into California. And so I got to try some really amazing whiskeys. And the clientele that come in, they would watch sports on the TVs, and they would get their beers and shots. And then I'm like, hey, like here you're using, it's funny now because I work for Beam Suntory, I'm like, there's other whiskeys out there besides Jim Beam and Maker's Mark. Try, Willet, try Black Maple Hill, try Elmer T. Lee, these other really fun stuff. And so I had to get them used to like not having their tried and true. And then I'm like, okay, you got that. Now let's talk about cocktails. And this is before anybody wanted an old fashioned. And so I had to get them to learn about cocktail culture. And they would have one, and then they would go back to beers and shots, but they would try it. And then I'm like, okay, because a lot of the American whiskey distillers, while they're waiting for their whiskey to age, started making gin because same tools.
Yep.
And so I'm like, all right, now you're knowing cocktails, let's talk about gin. And they're like, what the fuck, Kelly? And I'm like, well, you gotta drink the gin to get the whiskey.
Yeah.
And so I learned to talk to people about gin because they were whiskey drinkers. And that's kind of still how I talk to a lot of people about gin, because there's not a lot of gin knowledge, and people are really into aged spirits, but not so much into gin and cocktails. So I have to meet them where they are, and working at T-Rex and in that company for 7 years really did showcase a passion, creativity, but also people's willingness to learn and try something new. They might not love it, but at least they get experience to something else.
Was that the bar that because you managed like the world's largest
So this
gin?
is actually way before Whitechapel.
Way before that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this was in 2006, 2007. I mean, I was learning from some of my favorite people at Slanted Door, which was Charles Van Vietnamese restaurant. I mean, when they opened with a full bar, they had beer and wine, and then they got a new location, Ferry Building. I mean, Pappyton was their well. So there was like, world's the limit, right? Yeah. And so so the bars that I was doing were in Berkeley and Oakland. And then I started working in San Francisco, and I just went to bars full time. Right when my parents were like, oh, okay, fine, my daughter's a chef, she's not going to college. I'm like, yeah, so I'm gonna go in the bar full time. And they're still utterly confused. So I got to work and talk about classic cocktails, and 2/3 of all classic cocktails are made with gin for a reason, because it marries, carries, and elevates, and also it's a lot cheaper than aged spirits, so it's easier and more effective for mixing. So I worked for the Future Bars, which is the Bourbon Branch crew. Actually, all in all, in the Bay Area, I've opened up 30 bars and restaurants.
Okay. Wow.
You're a fucking legend, huh?
And one of them was in 2015. Martin Kate and his partners, Mark Kate from Smuggler's Cove, came up to me and said that they were opening up a gin bar in the Tenderloin. Funny enough, where the bar's located now is right across the street from the culinary school I went to in San Francisco, the California Culinary Academy. And on Fridays we would go to, it was at the time called the Embassy Lounge. It was the bar of the hotel. And on Fridays I didn't have a lot of money, and I would go and get a cocktail, and the old school Italian bartender was like, if it's a drink that I don't know how to make, it's gonna be free. So I took my parents' like Mr. Boston from 1960s and memorized 2 and 3 ingredient cocktails to go in, because there was a Mr. Boston behind the bar, and say, hey, I want a Godfather. And he's like, that's not a drink. I'm like, yeah, it's scotch, and was it Drambuie, or is that's a rusty nail? I don't even know. But whatever it is, he would go and look at it, and he's like, oh yeah. So I would get to drink at least one for free.
Okay.
And I learned very quickly what I do and do not like. So Whitechapel opened up, and I was their ginosaur, which made me sound like a really drunk dinosaur.
Yeah.
Basically their psalm for their gin bar, and at the time I got them up to over 800 bottles. So before Atlas in Singapore opened up, it was the largest gin collection in the world. Over 100 cocktails on the menu, in a beautiful space that they recreated it to look like a abandoned Victorian underground train station.
Okay.
And then through that, I ended up getting to meet the team that was doing the list for Atlas in Singapore. So I got to help them with their American gin list and sending them gins. And from there, just kind of hopped around until 2018 when Sipsmith, who I've been going to their distillery since 2010 and smuggling it up their gins back before they got an importer, asked me to be their ambassador, and I moved in 2018 to New York, where I currently reside. And I've just been teaching people about gin and drinking gin cocktails and doing everything I can to beat that botanical drum.
That is fucking awesome. That is one hell of an origin story. Like,
Yes.
That is. You might need a sip or something. Like, that's just or a breath or something. Like, that's just holy shit. Wow. But that is amazing. So, yeah, I got nothing to say, but that's just fucking cool. So,
Thank you.
Cheers to you. Question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
So, as I said, I started a bartending and get people excited about craft spirits and well-made spirits with whiskey. And there is a style of gin that predates the London dry style called Jenever.
Okay.
And so a lot of people like to drink this neat or with a little bit of beer called the Koopstach. But this one's going to be a little bit special. So I know that you and Whiskey Wednesday, so I wanted to bring something that might appeal more to those palates.
All right.
This is a Kornwein, which means that it is mostly malted barley, corn, and wheat.
Okay.
But this was a gift from the current master distiller at Bols Genever when I went out in 2014. So this is a Genever that they found in one of their warehouses that they thought just had paperwork. It turned out that they had a bunch of bottles. So this is, they're dating it the most they can know based on stamps and such and other paperwork is about the 1880s.
Fuck.
So this is an 1880s Kornwein. It has been tested to make sure that there's nothing living in it.
Okay.
Because Genevers of that time were much lower proof, anywhere between 25 to 32% alcohol, and they were using water from the canals, which is where everything ended.
Yeah.
So let us go ahead and try a little.
Cheers.
Cheers. So, Genever can be made in Holland, the lowlands, so Holland, Belgium, southern parts of Germany, and southern parts of France, legally to be called a Genever. And most of the malt wine, which is what the grain elements of it, are made in Belgium because they have farmlands. And when I talk about Belgian versus Dutch Genevers because of the East Indian Company had all the spices. So Dutch Genevers have a tendency to be more spice-driven, and Belgian Genevers have a tendency to be more grain-driven.
Okay.
So this one has your juniper coriander, it has apricot pits and gentian and twigs and berries and nuts and things.
Oh my.
Also, we find that, especially in this era, they have a tendency to be a lot sweeter than the Genevers of today because of the palate. And people of that time wanted a little bit sweeter, especially when they were trying to bring women who were buying it for their households.
Gotcha. Could you please explain why your mantra is a John Waters quote?
Right.
Which is, without obsession, life is nothing.
I mean, I think it's a really words to live by. It's between that and the David Bowie, I don't want to be normal, I want to be superhuman.
Okay.
So I love weird and wacky, and John Waters is weird and wacky. Every year that he does a adult sleepaway camp.
Okay.
And every year that I want to go, I have to do something else because summer is the biggest time for gin drinking, and my company who pays me very well wants me to do other things.
Right.
Maybe one of these days I'll just get a cough and a tickle. No one's watching that, right?
Well, I know a good doctor. He can write you a note. So
yes, I need a hefty prescription.
Yeah.
But no, I think the thing about obsession is it's borderline personality of knowing too much or being too critical. I love to teach people about spirits, and I love to demystify myths that we think that we know, or say, hey, this is what I've been told. Well, that might be marketing, or have you thought about it this way? And history is ever evolving and ever changing. Like we're drinking Geneva, which for a very long time, the story goes that the Dutch introduced Genevers and botanically grained spirits to the English during the 30 Years' War, and the Dutch courage, and the English brought it back to London and to the island, and that's how we got gin craze.
Okay.
Great story. But we do know that the English and the Dutch were fighting against each other during the 80 Years' War, which precedes the 30 Years' War. So it wasn't that the Dutch just started drinking it.
Right.
We also know that the English were living in like Rotterdam and those towns before the 80 Years' War, where they were interacting with the Dutch that were bringing the spices and the silks, and there was merchants, so we know about that. But there's also now a book that our master distiller, Jared Brown, and his wife, Anastasia Miller, found from the Worshipful Company of Distillers, which is the oldest gin distillery and guild in the world.
Okay.
And they taught people how to distill, and they had all these recipes, but of course they were written in code. And some of these go back to like 1495, and the original code that they found to decipher it was also a code.
Okay.
And so while Anastasia was in the Oxford library, she found in the the margins, somebody had written in the actual transitions and the dates were wrong. So the English actually introduced juniper and botanical spirits to the Dutch, and that's where they were starting to flavor their grain whiskey or their grain spirits of Geneva.
Okay.
And that's what we know of the history now. But we might find something later on and dispose it. So knowing too much might be not a great thing, or it could be great because we are talking about it now while drinking,
right.
Which is my favorite way to talk about it. But also the fact is, I have the second largest personal collection of gin in the world in my very small Brooklyn apartment.
Okay.
We are roughly hovering around 2,800 different labels of gin.
Wow.
Yeah. So, without obsession.
Yeah. That's perfect, because no matter what, in Brooklyn or moving to New York, everybody thinks that you're special or crazy, and then moving to New York, you find out there's like 10 people like you. So right off the bat.
That's the greatest thing about bars and restaurants in general is a little like goes to like.
Yeah. You can smell our own.
I should know. We can smell our own.
We find people that.
It's usually the deadness in the eyes, slightly hung.
Yeah. So then, I guess off of that, I love the mantra. What would be the best advice then you've ever gotten?
The best advice I ever got: invest in stocks and bonds. No, keep all your teeth. Probably the best advice is the ones that I never followed because I was determined to do it my own way. I don't know. I think you can't take it with you.
Okay.
I mean, everybody likes, from the point of my sister getting mad at me for opening up her Star Wars figurines because I wanted to play with them. I always joke about, with Bitcoins and stuff. I'm like, that's just the Beanie Babies of this year, which Beanie Babies were the tulips of, again, going back to the Dutch, when money meant nothing, so they would trade in tulips as a sign of wealth. I have a lot of gin. I still have a lot of really amazing whiskey, which I call my retirement fund. But I'll open up anything. In my collection, there might be like 10 bottles that I won't open, not because they're precious, just because they're not good.
Okay.
They're like, vintage gin is not necessarily good.
Okay.
We can talk about that. But so I'm just like, yes, I'd much rather you taste something that you might like than taste something that's old and weird that is not good.
Okay.
So yeah, you just can't take it with you. Like, enjoy it now.
Yeah, I agree with you that I hate people that just have the bottles on the shelf and you're like,
you don't need to buy two.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to buy one to enjoy and one to save for later. You're actually ruining the gray market for the resale, which I think is silly anyway.
Yep. I'm right there with you. I hate the secondary market. I think that is a pain in the ass. So.
I went to one of my first years going to MCC, so Manhattan Cocktail Plastic. I made it a point to actually, before there was the subway out here, before Ubers, I made it all the way up to Red Hook, where we are now, to go see Linnell. And Linnell's her liquor store, and I just remember she had a giant bathtub full of gin, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. And I ended up buying her Red Hook Rye.
Okay.
And the first time I went and bought it, it was $70. And then I went back the next year and it was $300 because people were selling it on the secondary market. And she's like, well, if they're selling it for $300, I'm gonna sell it for $300.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, people are willing to pay for it. Yeah, you can't. We know that you have a deep love for a Negroni. But can you tell us why? And then also going out, if like, is the Negroni immediately the first thing that we order, or like what like?
So, the Negroni I believe is the perfect gin cocktail.
Okay.
And the reason is because 99% of all bartenders across the world know how to make it. It is equal parts gin, sweet vermouth, and a bitter.
Okay.
Whatever that is. And so it's easy to make. And a not greatly made Negroni is still drinkable. Usually you just need a little bit more dilution, which is why I always ask for it on ice. And, that's great. But a poorly made martini is a crime against humanity. And so the Negroni was just the way to go. And I think the Negroni definitely gained a lot of popularity in 2020. Turned out to be the most popular cocktail sold in the United States. I think all those to-go cocktails really did help it because no citrus. But I think what it is it's much more approachable than, let's say, than martini, which is the most classic, what we think about in the cocktails for gin. Mostly because the fact that when you go and order a martini at a bar, is it vodka? Is it gin? What's the proportion? What type of vermouth? Is the vermouth refrigerated? How old is it? Are they gonna make it dirty? Like, most people don't know how to order a martini in the United States. They can go to the coffee shop and ask for exactly what they want. But when it comes to a martini, they're just like, what?
Yeah.
I remember working at Whitechapel, people would order like an extra filthy martini. And when I asked them what type of gin they wanted, and it was a very floral brand of gin, I would walk along the very long bar, come up to them and go, oh honey, like bring it in. Like, what happened to you today? Because something's going on. We should not take it out on your taste buds. And so
who touched it? Who
really. And I think the hard thing is we don't teach people about cocktails, and gin is cocktail spirit. Like, unless you're us or me, you're not really drinking a lot of gin neat. And so we're asking you to understand gins, but we're also asking you to understand cocktails. And if you're not making it the same way, you can have a variety of different experiences. So the Negroni, for me, is the easiest to get people to think about it. I also believe in equal parts.
Okay.
I believe in it so much, I tattooed the recipe on my body, much to my mother's chagrin. So it's equal parts or die.
Excellent.
And when I left San Francisco, we got the Golden Gate Bridge, and a bunch of the bartenders that I had worked with for many years in San Francisco, we all got variations of this tattoo on us. And it turns out now all those bartenders are moving to New York.
Excellent.
And so there's going to be way more Negroni equal parts.
There we go, equal parts.
So
Excellent.
if you see them, just say hi and maybe offer them the Negroni.
There you go. I love it. Your tribe's coming back to you. Like,
I don't need to make friends.
Bring friends. There we go. Well, fuck. There you go. I mean, we didn't even get to talk about the books yet, but you said a badly made martini is a crime against humanity. You have a martini book, you have a Negroni book, and you have the dessert cocktails.
And then
there's one more, right?
Well, the margarita book, I wanted so the British publishers, I wanted to call it the Daisy because the Daisy is margarita Spanish for daisy. Mm-hmm. Daisy is the largest cocktail family of different variations. So the margarita book is actually will be dropping on April 9th.
Excellent.
So my co-author and myself, David T. Smith, we have lots of fun writing these books. As we say, this is something that you could gift your mother and have her hopefully make you good cocktails.
There we go. Excellent. Well, there we go. That's question 2.
Woo!
Cheers.
Cheers.
Question 3, drink 3. What are we drinking?
So this is one of my favorite. All right, you have the Negroni. You maybe are into the martinis, but you want something different.
Okay.
Still, again, stirred classic. This is from 1895, George Kupler's Manual of the American Bartender. He was a bartender at the Holland House here in New York.
Okay.
So this is the Ford cocktail, also known as the Old Ford cocktail.
Okay, awesome. Cheers.
Cheers. So because it's 1895, London Dry Gin, also known as Imperial Gin, wasn't really a thing here in the United States. We still liked our Geneva, but we also liked a style called Old Tom.
Okay.
Old Tom Gin, it was kind of, for me, if you want to think about it, Geneva is more grain driven,
Okay.
low botanicals. London Dry Gin is very clean, low botanicals, and Old Tom is that in-between time, so it's less grain driven but more botanically driven than a London Dry. A lot of people say that it's sweetened, not always, because sugar was very, very expensive, but what they did use was heavier citrus botanicals, heavier spice botanicals, also to kind of mask maybe some imperfections in the distilling process, but also a lot more licorice root.
Okay.
Licorice root is actually 20% sweeter than cane sugar. It also hits you in the mid palate, where table sugar and cane sugar is right up front. It's also very natural and expensive. And I always like to tell people that licorice root does not taste like black licorice.
Okay.
There's no fennel, there's no the anisette type of flavors. It's more for sweetness and mouth texture. So this is a 2-to-1 style martini with blanc vermouth, which is the dry vermouth with like vanilla and more sweeter elements. And then a little bit of Benedictine,
Okay.
the oldest liqueur in the world, and then also orange bitters.
Awesome. I love this.
Yeah. So this was one of my, for people that might have a slightly sweeter palate that are dipping their toes into the martini style, this is a really good one.
Nice. And I was rude. I totally forgot to cheers. So cheers.
Cheers. The Sipsmith does not make an Old Tom style
Okay.
because we are much more in the classic London, where the birthplace. So I got to use my other favorite gin, which is out of Sweden called Hirno,
Okay.
which is the most awarded distillery in the world for gin. And they make some lovely stuff, but this is my favorite of
Okay.
theirs is their Old Tom.
Okay. Awesome. This is fucking delicious. All right. This is my favorite question.
Uh-oh.
So, we know that you are a super taster
Yeah.
and you love weird chips.
Ah, crisp, yeah.
So,
Oh no!
we're a little interactive.
Alright. What do we get? Oh, extra barbecue!
I would love for you to taste these and then tell us what drink you would pair with each one of these.
Oh man, I've only had one of these. What is this one with cheese? Yes, I do love a weird crisp. I spend a lot of money on weird ass crisps. But yeah, all right. Well, which one should we try first?
I don't care. This is.
All right, let's try the Ming Plus. I also love Thai food.
Okay.
I got to help open up a Thai restaurant in San Francisco called King Cow.
Okay.
It's a Michelin-starred restaurant. Pim, the owner and chef, she actually has 3 Thai restaurants, one in Thailand, 2 in San Francisco. They all have Michelin stars.
Awesome.
And now I am forever horrible with Thai food because I want only the best.
Okay.
So let's see. Smells like potatoes. A little bit of citric acid, some umami. All right. Here we go. Ooh. I like that some of them are the wavies and some of them aren't.
Yeah.
Definitely muckrock lime. Oh, sweeter than I would have thought. So, cocktail. I would definitely wrap up the citrus. But you still, it is got sweet, but it's almost in that kind of, almost like a saccharine sweet. So I want like a palm sugar or something to balance it out. So
Okay.
there is a delicious Malaysian style of tea called lemon tea, where you use like an Indian black tea and you almost cold brew it.
Okay.
And then you squeeze a bunch of limes into it and then honey syrup. And then what I like to do on the side is to have really non-expensive rum.
Okay.
So, and I would just take my giant thing of iced tea and just put
Put rum
rum
in it.
on it. I would only do it in reasonable amounts, and I would always measure it for legal purposes.
Sure. Of course.
But I think the tannins would work really well with that sweetness. You get more acidity to it, and then rum just makes the day go by.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah. All right. I want to try this extra barbecue.
Extra barbecue.
Like, it looks like they're just like meat on a grill
Yeah.
and a lime. You never want a
Yeah.
barbecue lime, but what is extra
I
barbecue?
don't know. It's just,
Like, you barbecued it. Well, it definitely has that
well, that's extra.
extra something.
Yeah.
It's almost like the chicken salt crisps from Australia.
Okay.
All right. Ooh. I don't know if I would say it's extra.
It's a little sweeter than.
I'm not mad at it though.
All right.
I'm gonna go Miller High Life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Champagne and beers.
Yeah. Champagne and bottled beers.
Mm-hmm.
I think because this would be something I would sit on the porch, have a beer, and just snack on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. This one, there is no English on this. Oh, it's Pepsi Cola. But it looks like it's got some spot prawns.
Yeah. And guacamole.
Is it guacamole? It might be like a green chili.
Maybe.
Like, yeah.
That's 2 in 1, so yeah.
Oh. Mix them all together. Ooh, there's some of them are green.
Oh shit.
Huh.
Maybe they went bad.
Maybe they're left over from St. Patty's.
Yeah,
Green one?
there you go.
Not green one.
All right.
It is 2 in 1.
It is 2 in 1. All
I don't know
right.
if you can see, but definitely. All right.
Yep, got a green one.
Now we'll try the green one.
Not a green one.
And then. Ooh. They are definitely different. These are very prawn shelly.
Mm.
All right, now we're gonna put them together. I would basically, because the prawn ones are a little bit more intense than whatever the saucy one, green one is. So I would want to play up the herbaceousness.
Okay.
So I would say a basil smash, maybe with Thai basil.
Oh, there we go.
With gin and citrus and sugar would be really good, or even like a mojito or something that has that herbaceousness that kind of brings it up, and a little bit of citrus to liven up the umami-ness of the spot prawns.
All right. And then our chili and cheese, I think, is our last
Yeah,
one.
chili and cheese, or crick pie. All right, I'm not gonna try to open it that way. It'll laugh and start. Ooh. You're gonna have to tell me where you get these weird snacks. I'm here for them.
There's a Japanese store on 5th Avenue, right by the Barclays Center.
Yes. Well, I think it's my favorite. They're oddly cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
You would think with this.
You would think there'd be more chili than there would be cheese, but
Box wine on ice.
okay.
Definitely. If you think anything more than that, you're gonna kill whatever. Ooh, that was a really good one. You're gonna kill whatever's gonna go on in there, so you just want something in the background.
Chill.
Yeah.
All right.
Huzzah!
There we go. We did it.
And whatever's gonna go with this Ford cocktail.
$1,000,000.
I think I'd drink the Ford cocktail first, and then I'll go into the crisps.
Yep.
Yeah, I love weird crisps.
Is that just with in your time in Tokyo, or
I think,
was it always?
well, I think a lot of it has to do with like I'm like the impulse buyer. Like, ooh, I need to know what that tastes like, good or bad.
Yeah.
I want to know. And usually in the crisp variety, not super expensive and kind of small, so in case I don't like it. And we're getting more and more new ones, whether it is like the Lay's with their write in, and then you have to vote which one's your favorite of it, but I think it's just salty, goes really good with drinks, and it's just fun.
Okay.
I think one of the ones we did last time was lemon braised chicken feet.
Okay.
Yeah, just I want to be in that marketing room where people are like, okay.
Yep.
Check, what next? What's the next big thing? They're like, how about this? And there have to be a lot of no's before they come up with this.
Right. Yeah. What are the no's?
Yeah. Like how do we get to a yes versus a no?
Yes.
Oh.
Just down for the adventure.
Yeah.
There we go.
We ride.
There we go. We identified and we paired. So I think that's a good question 3. So
I'm ready. Cheers. So we are going to drink probably one of it's a classic cocktail, probably one of the ones that is debated the most,
Okay.
especially between everywhere else in the world and New Orleans. And this is the 75. This is the French 75. So before I say anything, looks a little different.
Yep.
I want you to tell me what you think.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Sweeter, right?
There's maybe a little bit more viscosity and fruit notes, yeah.
Okay.
Do you like it?
I do.
Okay. So,
But I'm an easy person to please. Like, honestly, as long as it's in a glass and cold, we're good, so.
all right,
there.
good. So
Yeah.
We don't even talk about this. Let's just say
No.
so the French 75 is a very classic cocktail, which usually, unless you're in New Orleans, is going to be gin, lemon juice, sugar, and sparkling wine. That's what classic. You go to a bar now, that's what it is. But actually, the drink, the first time we were seeing it is the Soixante-Quinze, which is French for 75, and 1915. And it's Henri Tappé. So Henri Tappé worked as a bar manager next to Henry's bar in Paris. And the cocktail at this time was only called the 75. And it was a propaganda cocktail to celebrate those who were off in war.
Okay.
And it was the 75 is the military weapon that would take down like cavalry, it would take down planes and trains and whatever. And they said that if you had one, you would change the tides of war. So the first time we're seeing the 75 in a cocktail is actually, because in New Orleans they always say that it is a cognac cocktail or a brandy cocktail. But the first time we're seeing it, the 75 in print is actually equal parts gin and cognac.
Okay.
And then the other ingredients are a bar spoon of grenadine.
Okay.
So that has the acidity of it and a little bit of sweetness and fruit notes, and chilled water.
Okay.
And then just, if they have it around, maybe a splash of lemon juice, but no carbonation. There's no high acidity, and it was a stirred cocktail.
Okay.
And so that's what it is. It's my favorite variation of it. It got changed again in 1923,
Okay.
where it went back to England, where still gin and cognac, but the gin was twice the amount. We have a little bit more lemon juice, but we also then have still grenadine.
Okay.
And then it got changed again in 1927, where it actually goes to Harry's bar. He actually ended up bringing on Henri Tappé into the bar, but Henry, as we know, is a Scot. He did not like English, so this time he flipped it, so it was more cognac than gin, but understanding that you still needed those botanicals, he added absinthe to it.
Okay.
And we don't actually get to see what we think of now as a French 75 until it came to the United States in 1933 for Judge Junior's Here's How. And at this point, it is where we know it is today. But it was served on ice, crushed ice, which I think is the only way to get it. So I would say whether you want it with gin or cognac, always put it on ice because it really does change the texture and the dynamic of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, a little history with your cocktail.
There we go. Well, this is fucking fabulous.
Yes.
Again.
It's my favorite of the variations.
Yeah. Alright. Question 4.
Okay.
This is a weird one.
Okay.
Why is Balthazar the best of the 3 wise men?
Oh man. You're gonna make me sound petty as fuck, aren't you? So Balthazar is one of the wise men.
Yep.
He's the one that carries the myrrh.
Yep.
And out of the 3, the myrrh, the frankincense, and the gold, myrrh was actually the most expensive. And it was the gold was for, the story goes, gold was for Jesus to have while he was on land. The myrrh was to anoint him into what he had to do, and the frankincense was to carry him on into the afterlife, is as the story goes. But I have, it's not even little anymore, a collection of Balthazars.
Yep.
And the reason is because I was drinking Negronis and felt a little petty. I was in San Francisco and we had brunch at one of my favorite places called Nopa in the Nopa area of San Francisco, and I had parked in front of an antique store. It was San Francisco. Things are very much like a little bit more than they should have been, but you have to account for the rent and other such things. So I remember going in and walking around because I still had money in the meter, and I wasn't even around the holidays, and they were selling wood cutouts, not life size, but pretty tall cutouts of the nativity scene for $50 each. And so I, being me, went up to them like, so 50 for all of them? They're like, no, 50 each. I'm like, well, is there a discount if you buy them all? And they're like, no. And I'm like, but like, if someone just bought baby Jesus, like, what's...
It's over.
Like, yeah, like, what's the use of the other ones? So like, no, $50 each. I'm like, at least the wise men. Like, the wise men, there's 3 of them. And they're like, no. So I decided to test the theory out, and I bought one. So I picked the largest one because it was $50.
Right.
So I'm gonna get the largest one. That just happened to be Balthazar.
Okay.
Like from the ground up. So from this bar normal, he's about that tall.
Okay.
He's maybe a foot shorter than I am. No, about a half foot shorter than I am because I'm short. And so that turned into when I would travel and I would find at like antique malls or whatever nativity scenes that were particularly bad. Like the painting was off, or just like, what in the world is this? I bought them. Only for the Balthazars. I'm not religious, but I would feel slightly bad throwing away religious icons.
Yeah.
So I would like, if I went to a cafe or something, I would just subtly place, some things around. There are communities of people that actually collect a lot of them,
Okay.
So people collect the animals. I know someone who collects the angels. Nobody collects. No, nobody collects Joseph because he's a cuckold.
Damn!
Yeah.
So we know that we don't collect Joseph. But I did feel a little bad about maybe throwing away baby Jesus.
Yeah.
So I have a drawer that I would put the baby Jesuses in. Sometimes I would carry it around. Someone's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know, let's ask baby Jesus.
Hang on, baby Jesus, this is gonna get bumpy.
Again, weird. I have a friend that I send all the animals to. So that has turned into me very much like having so many Balthazars. They're up on my wall, and I do have a price point of how much I'm willing to pay for, because it usually comes with everything else. You can't really buy one,
Right.
as except this one
Yeah.
price. And so I have quite a bit of weird people like cleaning out their parents or the grandparents will find a nativity scene like, hey, do you want it? So now I get people sending me their Balthazars. My friend sent me, her and her siblings, when they were going through community, would have to paint a full set, so her mother had 3 sets of them.
Okay.
And so I ended up getting all the Balthazars, so they're place of prominence now. So
Gotcha.
the thing is a bunch of different Balthazars. So that's why Balthazar.
All right. I love it.
Pettiness has cost me space and American dollars.
Well, but also, just that little obsession just really turns into something. It's
So many obsessions.
it's a great story. So, well, there we go.
There we go. It's a Balthazar.
The Balthazar. Question 5, Grand 5.
Question 5, Grand 5.
Last read of the night.
So sad.
I know.
Went by so quick.
I know. It was just like that. What are we drinking?
So, I wanted to show the gambit of what gin can do,
Okay.
especially for people that might not drink a lot of gin or cocktails. And this is actually a variation of a drink called the Skip and Go Naked.
Okay.
It was really popularized, or I saw it mostly in like British bars, and I think it was much more like the fraternity uni. So let's just ignore that part of it. But it's in its core, it's a Boilermaker.
Okay.
So you would take a Collins glass, you would add gin, like a lemonade or a cloudy lemon is what they call it in the UK, and then top it off with a lager or other lighter style beers, preferably not hops.
Okay.
But what I really love is, so I grew up in Stuttgart, and we know that the biggest beer festival in Germany is the Oktoberfest. The second one is actually in Stuttgart, and it's around the summer when they release the wits, the wheat beers, the unfiltered wheat. So, and I like to pair it with a very classic London dry gin, so lots of juniper, coriander galore to help with the flavors of the beer. So this is a local brewery to New York. This is their unfiltered wheat beer with just a little bit of our Sipsmith gin.
Okay.
And I want to see what you think.
All right. So we taste and then beer first, and then.
I'm not going to tell you how to drink. You just put it in your mouth, swish it around.
switch-
Mouth
oh,
cocktails.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay.
I mean, Boilermaker is usually whiskey
Yeah.
and beer. So this is a play, but if we wanted to, we could make a little a la minute. Here's a little bit of lemonade. So almost like a shandy.
Okay.
And then without making too much of a mess.
Oh,
There we go. This is a really, this is one of my favorite things to do at a bar that might not have a cocktail menu or they're too busy. I'll just get a neat pour of gin, maybe a nice crisp lager or wheat beer if they have it, and make my own cocktail.
Awesome.
So, there you go.
Oh yeah. That I like. That is.
Especially on ice.
Yeah.
Crisp, refreshing, porch drinking.
Yeah, Porsche. Yeah, yep. I like that. That is damn good.
Yeah.
All right. Question 5. So it comes down to the flip of the Whiskey Wednesday coin.
All right.
That is our new coin. So there's a poem in there, but just pull out the coin first.
Ooh, it's purple.
It's purple. Yeah. So
Ooh.
one side says fuck yeah, one side says fuck no. You do not have to answer. You can flip it. You can spin it. The coin will give us the answer. You do not have to answer. The coin will give us the answer.
Okay.
But also feel free to answer
All
if you
right.
want. But question 5.
Okay.
Do you feel that you have an unhealthy obsession about juniper?
Well, I mean, I know the answer. All right. So, like, how's the best way to spell it?
I just would probably give her a good. There we go. Look at that. Natural.
Thinking my answer, putting it into there.
Says fuck yeah.
I mean, what is unhealthy per se?
You know what? I think it comes back to question 2. Someone may say unhealthy, you might think normal. So
Yeah,
therefore,
I mean, I would say people that think that they have too much bottles in their life, or they have a flatmate or a partner or somebody else that thinks that they have too much to say. I know somebody who has 2,800 bottles, and for me, what I tell my parents is, I know somebody who has 8,900 bottles of gin. So I need to play catch up.
yeah, I agree. Like, look, another man's treasure is another someone's, trash, or what vice versa. But yeah, like I just think that who's to say what's unhealthy? As long as you are happy, that's all that matters.
Yeah, you don't have to move anytime soon, so I'm doing pretty good.
Exactly. Well, there we go. That is 5 drinks down, 5 questions answered. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me at Travel Bar. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Until we can drink young person, cheers to you.
Cheers to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.